Hello, everyone. This is Dan Old School Green with Dan Ring. We are the Heat Ratio Sports Network, and today we bring you a special edition of College Football Ring Zone. Dan's baby. Dan's over there. I can't get my screens right. So this is Dan's baby. He's been on a hiatus, but we thought, what better way to bring Dan back than to have a draft special, as it were, as in 2 weeks of this recording the Eagles will hopefully make some wise decisions for a change. Last year, they had a good draft, and Dan's going to share players at various positions to tease us, to entice us, to have us drooling over based on Dan Ring's thoughts. I pray the Eagles take this guy at this pick or that pick. And Dan will give draft areas where he thinks they'll fall, sleepers. I won't take up any more time. I'm just the host. Dan's the expert. So, Dan, which category are we starting off this draft preview with?
So before we start, thank you, Dan, for having me, and to Tony, as usual, and the Heat Ratio Sports. It's a great network. We're going to expand our Ring Zone coverage next year, and this is a good lead off in the draft to start off with a new season of College Football Ring Zone. But for today, we're going to start off on quarterbacks, and I've looked at all of these guys throughout the season and watched the scouting combine as well, and kind of see how they can project to the pros. This quarterback class is good, not great. There's no Peyton Mannings in this class, Andrew Luck's in this class. A lot of solid quarterbacks who might have long careers, but nobody that really stands out above the rest. There's certainly no consensus, and I would be shocked if a quarterback went in the top 2 or 3 picks.
All right. So with that in mind, I'm not going to steal your thunder. We all know about the Kenny Pickett's, the Malik Willises of the world. Do any of these quarterbacks have the Russell Wilson potential? He went in the 3rd round and became a future Hall of Famer. So let's talk about your top 5 quarterbacks and if there's anyone that could be a franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 12 years.
So good question, Dan. The closest to a Russell Wilson clone would be Malik Willis. About the same size, same arm strength, evasiveness, and athleticism as Russell Wilson had when he came out. Russell Wilson was somewhat of an unknown quantity. He had transferred from NC State to Wisconsin when he was picked. Malik Willis has played in lower level competition at Liberty, but has a lot of the same measurables. So I think that's a very comparable setup for Malik Willis, and teams aren't going to make him. He's not going to drop to the 3rd round. So he's my top quarterback on the board, the most athletic, I think, by far in this draft class. Second, I actually have Sam Howell from North Carolina. I think Sam Howell. So Willis will go in the top 10. Sam Howell, I think, is a 1st rounder as well. I think his measurables are a little bit better than Pickett's. And Howell has done it for, I think it's been a 3-year starter at North Carolina. Pickett's been a 4-year starter at Pitt. I just don't think he's as maneuverable or athletic as Sam Howell. I just don't think Kenny Pickett is – I think he's a little bit overrated. I think he'll go high in the draft. I just don't see him having a really productive, great career that mid-first-round quarterbacks usually have.
Now, quick question about Malik Willis before we move on a little bit.
Yep.
I'm assuming Russell Wilson dropped because he was a 6'1" quarterback. Size was his issue. Now, Malik Willis is also just 6'1". He has an absolute howitzer for an arm, but they say he can't hit the ocean from a boat with his accuracy. So, assuming his accuracy is worked on, coached on, there's his upside, his absolute cannon, and the elusiveness you referenced.
Yep.
Okay.
So he's got a lot of intangibles that are hard to coach, and the tools are all there for him. So one of the reasons that Russell Wilson dropped, I believe, and this was 10 years ago, is I think he was a baseball player as well.
So they thought he might go that route.
Yes. So that's one of the reasons that he fell.
I believe he wasn't drafted him.
I think so. So he wasn't committed to football.
There you go.
And that's the main reason that he dropped.
So from this class of quarterbacks, who's your sleeper that people aren't talking about that you think might have some production?
So there's a kid from Western Kentucky Bailey Zappi, who is got a great measurables, 6'1", 220, a big kid, really good accuracy. Hasn't played the best competition, but they threw the ball around a lot. They had an air raid offense there. I like this kid. I think he's a gamer. Right now, he's projected to go in like the 5th or 6th round. I think he could sneak into to day 2 as the 3rd round pick. Really like this kid. He's a little bit older. He's a grad transfer from a small school in Houston Baptist. But he's really got some measurables and intangibles with his intelligence and his ability to pick up an offense pretty quickly that I think will, at least if he's not a starter, he'll be a serviceable backup for a long time in the NFL.
Now, so the guys that you've talked about, Malik Willis, 6'1". Now, you said Zappi has some size. He's thick, but he's 6'1". He's not that tall.
Right. He's thick, and he's also a more of a pocket passer.
Right.
So having that elusiveness and that ability to scramble as much maybe isn't as important when you're 6'1" and you're a pocket passer and you're taking a 3-step drop and getting rid of the ball quickly.
And Kenny Pickett, we know, has good size. He's got
the hand size is an issue.
I'm telling you, everybody, if you haven't done so, take.
I know. I don't know either. I don't have a big hand. I think he's 8.5 or 8 3/4.
Thumb to pinky. I'm 9.5. So I got it. I got a future as a 53-year-old quarterback.
You do.
And did we talk? I'm sorry. I was taking notes during some of your segment. Did you talk about Matt Corral at all?
He's the next one on my list. He and Desmond Ridder are kind of interchangeable. I think they're very similar.
We'll close with them.
Yeah, Ridder I like a little bit more. I think he's a little more of his physical characteristics, and he's more of a leader. I don't know how much Matt Corral can pick up. He's been in pretty much Lane Kiffin's offense exclusively, and I'm just not sure. I'm not sold on Matt Corral. Some of the decision making and things like that have to be coached out of him. Again, I think he'll be a backup and he could be a serviceable starter. I like Ridder a little bit better. I think his measurables are a little bit better than Corral's.
All right. So in summary, Malik Willis goes top 10.
Malik Willis will be a top 10 pick. Sam Howell and Kenny Pickett towards the end of the 1st round. Pickett might go ahead of him because the scouts love him and his fake slide that he had in the bowl game or in the ACC championship that he had with showing his athleticism. And North Carolina didn't have as good a year as they were supposed to. So Howell's stock might drop a little bit. I just like him a little bit better as a quarterback. And Ridder and Corral, I think, are 2nd round picks. So they'll both be no later than the 2nd round.
And Zappi could go anywhere between rounds 3 and 5, and you would think he'd be a steal.
I do.
In the 3rd round.
I do. I think he could be a 3rd round pick, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in the high 3rd round.
Now, obviously, we are a Philly centric podcast. We're both from the Philadelphia area, but we're trying to do this for everybody. So, obviously, the Eagles. There's rumors they like Malik Willis. You never know with Howie that he'll break all our hearts, give up all this 1st round capital we have and trade for Malik Willis. Who knows with Howie? But maybe someone like a Bailey Zappi can be taken in the 3rd round and be a prospect to be happy about. But so honestly, as an Eagles fan, I pray that we don't see a 1st round pick by the Eagles at the quarterback position.
I can't see that happening. I know they had interviewed Kenny Pickett and they had dinner with him. The fact that they traded 2 of their 1st round picks to the Saints for a 1st rounder this year and next year's
draft.
They're looking ahead. So I think they're pretty committed to Jalen Hurts. I think they've said that. Whether you believe or not,
they can say that until they're blue in the face.
I can't picture that after everything they put into Jalen Hurts, they're going to then take another future, quote unquote, future 1st round, quarterback with the 1st round pick. I just don't see it. They have too many other areas of need. Unless they're going to trade, again, they could package 15 and 18 for a player they like in the top 10 that are targeting now. That could be a defensive player.
Well, that's different than a quarterback. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
No way a quarterback in the 1st round.
You heard it first, Dan Ring. If it happens, we'll go after him with fire and pitchforks. All right. Our next category will be the running back position. Again, running backs, unless you're a Saquon Barkley, a Zeke Elliott, Derrick Henry type, teams have the philosophy now, Dan, I think you would agree, where you don't waste a 1st round pick on a running back anymore. you can get steals in later rounds. What is your thought on that topic, and what is your thought on this class of running backs?
Absolutely. We won't see a running back, if at all, in the first round until the last 25 and above. It's again a good running back class. There's no Saquon Barkley's in this class. There's no Derrick Henry's. NFL teams almost exclusively now have 2 or 3 backs that they rotate. So unless you have a guy like Henry, who's going to get the ball 30, 35 times a game, running backs now are getting the 15, 20, 22 carries a game at the most. And this class is pretty much indicative of that. Even in college, some of the colleges are doing that as well, where they have a running back by committee. But there's a few running backs here that I really like. Bryce Hall is the top running back on the board. I think that's pretty unanimous that he is the best. He was a Heisman Trophy candidate earlier this year, had some injury problems. Iowa State didn't do quite as well as they were expected to. So Hall kind of fell off a little bit, but he's got measurables. He's got speed. He's a bell cow running back in the NFL. Not a great receiver. Didn't catch the ball a ton in college, but he would be probably the first running back off the board. I can't see somebody taking somebody ahead of him.
So you don't think Kenneth Walker has a chance to go ahead of him?
No, I think Walker will be behind him. He's the second back on my list. The issue with Kenneth Walker is he's a little shorter. He's a big guy, and didn't have any receiving ability at all in college. They didn't throw the ball to him at all for a reason.
In today's NFL, that's huge. Yes,
that's huge. So he's a 2-down back. He's also got a lot of tread on his tires. Michigan State wore him down last year. He carried the ball, I think, over 300 times. So he's gonna, and he's a little bit older. I believe he's 23. So that's something to look for. But I like him. He's an explosive back. He's going to be a good productive back in the NFL. I like Kyron Williams for a lot of the same reasons out of Notre Dame. He's the third back.
Similar size, right?
A little bit smaller, but really quick and fast. He's a breakaway back, and he's shown he can carry a load. I mean, Notre Dame, they played top competition all year, obviously. He's dynamic. You get him out in space, he's going to make people miss. And he's a good receiver. And I think that's what most pro teams are looking for now, is that you have to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield, and they run spread offenses. So, again, unless you're Tennessee with Derrick Henry, you're not going to be as much of a power running team. And Kyron Williams kind of fits the bill as that kind of player that you can split, you can spread, you can get him in space one-on-one against a linebacker, and he's going to be effective.
All right, let's give the viewing audience 2 more, and then we'll give a prediction and where you think they'll be taken.
Yeah, Isaiah Spiller is a pretty highly rated back. He's another big back out of Texas A&M. Doesn't have a ton of speed for the NFL, but again, he's not going to be that breakaway back that you look for. He's more of a workhorse back and a big guy. Like him, not as much as Kenneth Walker. I think they're kind of in the same mold, although Spiller's a little bit bigger. So Spiller will be probably a second day pick. And Brian Robinson Jr. from Alabama, they just turn out running backs there. Not a lot of tread on his tires. He was a first-year starter at Alabama. Got nicked up a little bit at the end of the year, but is a big guy who can really move a pile. And NFL teams will like him as a third down option to run it with a committee-style attack.
Now, what would you – we'll stick with your featured back, Bryce Hall. Is he a second-round pick or late first-round pick?
I think he's an early second-round pick.
Okay.
He could sneak into the first round again with trades in the NFL all the time. If there's a team that targets him that has a couple second round picks and some draft capital, they want to trade up. They might want to trade up to target him. But as you said earlier, Dan, in your lead in, running backs in the NFL these days, so many are interchangeable that you're not going to spend a ton of draft capital or a high first round pick on a running back unless it's Saquon or somebody like that.
And we'll close with this. Who is your Terrell Davis, your 6th round pick that becomes a stud?
Yeah, Jerome Ford from Cincinnati started out at Alabama. He's smaller back, but he's really fast. Very little tread on his tires. Is a tough kid. Played for Cincinnati. Obviously, it was in the college football playoff this year. So he's a kid that I think has something to prove as well. He's a little on the short side, but he's stout. So he's strong, and I think he'll fit in nicely to a in probably a 4th or 5th round pick that people kind of are sleeping on a little bit.
All right, very good. That's an awesome summary of the running back position. Now we're going to a position that I'm excited about. I'm excited about for the wrong reasons. If the Eagles had done a better job at this position, we're going to talk about wide receivers, ladies and gentlemen, we probably would not even look this way because we'd have potentially Jefferson, Metcalf on
Right.
our outside, and this position would be set. But as a result of drafting Jalen Ragers of the world, or Sega Whitesides of the world, we're still revisiting this position. Now we have Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins. Some people are high on, some are just like he's a number 3 and 4. Let's not force him down your throat. But if the Eagles had to use one of their top picks at the wide receiver position, do you see any of these guys that really, really excite you?
Yes, and Treylon Burks from Arkansas is an absolute beast. So interesting, the Eagles' position with Devontae Smith. He's kind of a slight and slender guy, really fast, tremendous. He'll be an All-Pro. But maybe you want to team him up with a bigger guy on the other side. Rager, for whatever he's worth, is also kind of a slot receiver, a smaller guy. Burks is a big dude. He's about 220. I think he's about 6'3". He's a really good-looking player. He's been rocketing up draft boards, mainly because he can run. He's got tremendous hands, got a great catch radius, and he's 6'3", 220. So defensive backs will have trouble, out physicaling him, and he's also a good route runner.
Now, do you have Drake London, another big dude on their board, another 6'4", 220 wide receiver?
Yeah, and I have him on my overrated list.
Okay, let's talk about him.
I don't think his hands are as good as Burks. I think his production wasn't what it should have been in some of the bigger games that USC had. I don't think he's as fast. He's got speed, certainly. I don't think he's as fast as Burks. I kind of saw London. They didn't really use him with gadget plays as much. They kind of had him out wide a lot. Burks, they kind of used in the slot. They ran him on reverses, jet sweeps, things like that. I don't think they did that as much with London. So I think the versatility factor there with Burks, I think I just like a little bit more than London. I know London's been talked about as possibly a first-round pick. I'd be surprised. I see him more as a mid-second round pick.
Now, I forgot to mention to our audience, the Eagles pick at 15 and 18 after they made their Saints trade. They're now at 15 and 18 as of this moment. How many receivers do you see going in the top 15 to 18 in this draft?
I think at least 3 receivers are going to go. Chris Olave is my top receiver. I just like his route running is excellent. Route running.
And he surprised people with his speed at the combine, right?
Yeah, I think he ran a 4.38 at the combine. So he's a durable guy. Didn't get hurt at Ohio State. I don't think he missed a game in his career, if I'm right. So he's a guy I like as the top receiver in the class. He and his teammate Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams from Alabama, Burks, they're all kind of anywhere in the top 4 of those 4 guys.
So if the Eagles took any one of the receivers you mentioned other than Drake London, you'd be thrilled.
Yes.
Okay. Now
yes.
That's good to know because there's 4 legit guys that you mentioned: Wilson, Williams, Burks, and Olave.
Right.
Is there any sleepers on this list?
Wan'Dale Robinson from Nebraska, transferred from Kentucky last year. He's a sleeper. He's another gadget guy, a little on the small side, really shifty. Kentucky used him in a lot of different ways last year. They had Will Levis as their quarterback, and they ran him a lot. But they also ran Robinson a lot out of the jet sweeps and slot, doing some really interesting gadget plays. I think you can do a lot of things with him. He's a sleeper. Right now he's projected like a 5th-round pick, mainly because of his size. But he's 5'11", 190. He's not little. I've seen him going anywhere from the 3rd round to the 5th round. I'd be surprised if he doesn't land somewhere in the end of the 2nd or the 3rd round. But right now he's like the 12th to 15th rated receiver in most mock drafts.
And I'll close with this question at the wide receiver position. Obviously, again, we get a lot of Penn State football on our television. Your thoughts on Johan Dotson?
Dotson I have as my 2nd or 3rd receiver. Talent-wise, I don't think he's in that group of 4 that will get drafted before him. But I've watched him all year. He's tremendous. The downside to him is his size. He doesn't have any measurables that really stand out. He ran a 4.45, I believe, at Penn State's pro day. So he's not one of the top speed guys, but his elusiveness, he's got the best hands probably of the wide receivers that I've seen. He made some unbelievable catches over the past couple of years. If you're really interested in looking at him, you can look up his highlights. His one-handed grab against Ohio State was like he just went up and snatched it out of the air for a touchdown against good competition. So right now I see him as a late first round, early second round. Green Bay has been the destination he's been most attached to. But you know what? Again, Eagles have a second round pick. If he's there, I wouldn't be surprised if they take him.
Yeah, the only the only negative and not positive would be that they'd have two tiny wide receivers in Dotson and Smith.
Yeah,
and you're looking to counterbalance that with a big guy on the outside.
Are you talking about Howie, who took Rager and Arcega-Whiteside? So
Rager's stocky. the fact that he has center, that he has hands like a center, that's a whole nother story.
Right.
All right. So let's move on. Now, this is a position that I don't think the Eagles will really concentrate heavily on, maybe as a depth guy, but let's talk about tight end for a little bit.
Okay. So not a great tight end class. Not a lot of guys that really stand out. The top guy I see is Charlie Kolar from Notre Dame. From Iowa State. I think he transferred from Notre Dame. He's a big kid. He can really run. He's a good blocker. I think teams, you're not going to have even a Dallas Goedert in this tight end class, who was a second round pick by the Eagles. So I think you look for value here. So Kolar, Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State's another guy that I like who was really productive in college. For me, I kind of look at the guys that can really block in line and stretch the field a little bit. They're not asked to do too much. And this class kind of Jalen Windermeyer is a guy who has risen up some boards with his measurables and his combine. But a lot of these guys there's no first round picks here. Tight ends.
Now, George Kittle went in the third round, I believe. Is there any potential sleeper tight end from this list?
Yeah, there's a guy, Grant Calcavecchia, started at Oklahoma, had a lot of injury problems, and transferred to SMU. I'm sorry, what did I say? Calcavecchia?
Yeah, he went to SMU.
Calcaterra's name. He's a big guy who can really run. He had a really good start to his career at Oklahoma and just had some injuries. He's a sleeper. He's probably a 4th or 5th round pick, maybe even later than that. And I think he's a good value pick as a sleeper who really has talent. Isaiah Likely is another guy from a small school, Coastal Carolina, who's also can really run. Probably not as great a blocker as you'd want at tight end, but more of an H-back. Some of the NFL teams are going, using H-backs. So he could be somebody that could be valuable in the 4th or 5th round as well.
All right, awesome. So that is the tight end position. Again, Dan does not feel it's a strong position. And from an Eagles perspective, we've got some depth with the blocking type tight end already on the roster. So I don't know how this position will play out for the Eagles. And honestly, I do not care. So I will move on to the trenches. We're going to talk first about tackles. You can never have enough tackles on your roster to block for your quarterback. So let's talk about a tackle or two that you really love in this draft.
Yeah, Evan Neal is probably the top tackle in the class from Alabama. Even in the championship game against Georgia, he was going against Walker and Jordan Davis and some of those big guys up front. He held his own. He's just a massive guy. He's 6'7", 355 pounds. So he'll be a top 5 pick for somebody. He's been durable. He has a little trouble with his foot speed and his setup, but he's so big, he covers so much territory, and his feet are good enough that he'll be a starting left tackle for a long time and probably an all-pro. So he's the guy I like head and shoulders above the rest. I know a lot of people are high on Iquanu from NC State, another massive guy, not quite as big as Neal. Moves probably a little bit better. Tackles in the NFL don't tend to pull a ton, but he's a guy that can really run and pull, much like centers. And the Eagles use that with Jason Kelce a lot. And they used to use it with Jason Peters. They haven't used it as much with Mailata or Lane Johnson. But Iquanu is a guy who could probably play guard as well. He's pretty versatile. So he'll be a top 10 pick also. The guy I like the best is probably Falale from Minnesota. He's the biggest guy in the draft. He's
6'8".
Yeah, almost 400 pounds. Yeah. But you know what? When you see him on the field, a guy that matters, you're going to see. But he's not. It's like because there's such a thing as good weight. It's good weight.
Well, like a Jordan Mailata type of guy.
Yeah, but he's even bigger than Mailata.
Yeah, that's astonishing.
So he's a guy who's going to go, I think, in the top 15 picks. He's from Australia also, so very similar to Mailata. And because of Mailata's success, I think more people are looking at him.
Now, what are your thoughts on a left tackle in college transitioning to right tackle in the NFL? Easy or not as easy as you would think?
Easier.
Okay.
Certainly left tackles transitioning to moving to left tackle in the pros. It's a whole
the other way is harder.
Yeah, much harder. So, obviously 90% of the quarterbacks in the NFL are right-handed, so their blind side's the left side. So plugging a rookie in a left tackle when right defensive ends are probably the best pass rush ends that you have on your team, that's a tall ask for a lot of these guys coming in. Neal can do it. I think Falale, I always mess his name up. Falale. I think he can do it with some coaching, but I think he's going to start out as a right tackle. He's strictly a tackle. I don't think he's going to be able to play guard in the NFL, but he's a guy who I've watched a lot and is going to be a long time pro.
Interesting. All right, let's quickly transition to the interior alignment.
Well, before we do that, I want to go to an overrated on the tackle side.
I'm sorry. Overrated.
This is a Penn State pick, so I'm going against my Penn State
Rasheed
guy.
Walker.
Terrible. Wow. He should have come out last year. He had such a terrible year. He was disinterested. You just see his body language on the field last year, especially after they lost their first game. He just plummeted, and his stock is plummeting as a result. He's got good measurables. He's got good hands, good feet. He could be a serviceable tackle, but he was projected as a first-round pick if he had come out the year before. Now they're looking at him as like maybe a fourth-round pick. I don't even think he's going to go in the fourth round. I don't know how his interviews went. His pro day was okay. He is overrated. I hate to say it because I liked him his first year starting and second year starting. Last year, he just seemed like he just lost interest and really just faded down the stretch and disappeared.
But could that fourth or fifth round talent develop into what he should have been?
It possibly with coaching. I think he needs some motivation, and maybe a paycheck will motivate him.
Or go the other way, right?
Or go the other way. You never know with these guys. But, I was just really disappointed in him. And I just think that from where he was last year to this year, I think he's still overrated. A lot of teams are talking about him with his measurables. I just didn't like his attitude and his body language all year. And so for that reason, I think he's a little overrated still.
All right. Since you went overrated, what tackle haven't you mentioned that you can see shocking us and being very good?
There's a tackle, Dare Rosenthal from Kentucky, who I watched a little bit in some of the SEC games this year. Another big guy, 6'7", 330. Transferred from LSU. I think he can play. I think he's being overlooked a little bit. He hasn't played a ton of football. I think that's been one of his issues. But he's a guy who's kind of a project, and I think he's a kid that has the full measurables that you need, and he's got the foot speed to be a serviceable pro. He could be a steal in the fourth round. I like him, so look out for Dare Rosenthal. I think he'd be a good player.
All right, there you have it. Now we'll conclude episode 1 of NFL Draft Prospects. We're covering just the offense today with some interior linemen. Who do you love? Who do you think is overrated? And who could be a steal in the interior line? And we'll tie in centers with this as well, obviously, guards and centers. Yeah,
the only center really I think that's going to make any kind of an impact in this draft is Tyler Linderbaum. And he's been all over the place. He was mentioned a lot to the Eagles. He's kind of a Kelsey clone, about the same size. Maybe not quite as quick as Kelsey, but kind of a leader. Played a ton of football at Iowa. He can play guard as well. And I know the Eagles had been projected to look at him. I wouldn't be surprised if they took him at 18. Mm-hmm. If they stuck at 15 and 18, I wouldn't be surprised. I've seen him go in the top 12, and then I saw him go at the end of the first round in some mocks. So I don't know what to make of him. I think he's the best center out there, though. So I think that kind of covers the centers.
But is your belief system that he could plug and play?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He's got great leverage. So, if you just compare him against Jordan Davis, who's probably the best defensive tackle in the draft, who's a monster, guy's as big as a mountain, and Linderbaum's about 285, 290. He just has to kind of guide Davis. He's not going to have to bulldoze him or pancake him. And I think he'll be able to do that well in the pros with a lot of these defensive linemen. So, yeah, he's a plug-and-play guy.
Okay.
For the guards, I think Darian Kennard from Kentucky, another massive guy, 6'5", 340, is my top guy. Kenyon Green and Zion Johnson are also right behind him. Any of those guys could go in the first round or early second round, and I think you can flip any of those three guys. They're all pretty much the same kind of player. They're all about 6'4", 320, 330. Zion Johnson's a little bit lighter, and he came from an FCS program and transferred into Boston College, but he can really move. He's a road grader type of guy, kind of like Doug Brzezinski. Remember him?
Yes.
Remember what Andy Reid said about him? He called him a bowling ball with knives. That's what Doug Brzezinski was like. Unfortunately, the knives were pretty dull.
Butter knives.
He butter knives. He flamed out after about 2 years. But Zion Johnson kind of reminds me of that kind of player, just from watching him.
Hopefully, his steak knives.
Yeah. Thaler Montford is a guy that's kind of interesting. Another Ohio State lineman, and they're always at a premium. So he's a guy to watch. I think he's a second-round pick. Some of the mocks have him going third or fourth round, but he's 6'5", 315. He was a tackle first, and then they moved him inside to guard. He can play. He's a good player to watch. And kind of an underrated guy, Ed Ingram from LSU, is projected in the fifth round. He had some off-the-field issues, which dropped his stock a little bit. If he straightened himself out, his measurables and his attitude, he's a nasty blocker. I think can elevate him a little bit in the draft.
So I guess a quick question for you. The Todd Herremans, the Jack Driscolls of the world, again, using Eagle analogies, guys that can play anywhere on the line. If you need a guy at either tackle position, you got to plug him into guard. Is that the kind of player that you would say Thayer Montford is?
Yes, and that's the kind of guy the Eagles are always looking for. Is
exactly
those guys? Yeah. So you need guys that can, I think it's easier for a guy to go from guard to tackle and in a pinch because of their size than from tackle to guard and play with their hand on the ground all the time as a guard. Might be a little harder. Now, Jack Driscoll's a guy who's versatile enough because he did both in college. And Montford did both in college. A guy like, Evan Neal or Falele. Is it going to be able to do that? I've had trouble with his name for 3 years now. So yeah, Montford's a guy, maybe a middle round pick for the Eagles on a third round pick if he's still there. Might be a guy to add some depth. I don't know. A lot of these teams pick up guys that are like on the waiver wire, and they have size and they can be coached a little bit, and they can fill in here and there. And all these NFL teams seem to have these guys. They come out of nowhere, they stick for a couple years, they play really well, and then they kind of flame out because their bodies can't take it. So you need to restock with these guys. But a lot of the guys the Eagles get too are either late round picks or undrafted free agents. Like Driscoll, I think was he a fifth round pick, sixth round pick?
Yeah, fifth or sixth. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think he was as highly rated as his teammate at Auburn was that year. So who I think they also picked up, but I think he was undrafted. I can't remember his name. So a lot of these guys,
Prince, the guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So obviously we haven't covered the defense yet. So Dan did a great job of breaking down every offensive position. Once we conclude with the defense, I'm sure as a network, we're going to do a post-draft show with the Eagles, and Dan will have to be a part of that and let us know how the Eagles did at the draft, if he felt they did some reaching at certain positions and had some steals at other positions. So that's the day we really look forward to.
Absolutely.
After your discussion's completely over, what did the Eagles actually do? But for day one of our draft special covering the offense, Dan Ring broke it down excellently. And on behalf of Dan Ring, I am Dan Old School Green. We are the Heat Ratio Sports Network. Check us out on YouTube. Tap that bell and subscribe, and you'll see tremendous programming just like this. Till our next episode on the defense, we will see you very soon. Stay well, everybody.
Thank you.